Hey, peace and blessings to you. Welcome to another episode of We Are Voices for Life podcast. My name is Jerry B. I'm grateful to be your host, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have the great conversation that we're getting ready to dive into. It's interesting. I met this young lady just recently as she is the newly appointed executive director of Ohio Right to Life. And I met her through Michael Ganadakis, and he said, "Hey, I have somebody to introduce you to." And boy, was it a pleasure meeting her. We're going to talk about her specifically, her vision, Ohio Right to Life, and how we can just double down on standing for pro life issues. So, without further ado, I just want to thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much for coming on to our podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. It is such an honor to be here with you. I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and for being new to this, maybe it doesn't seem like you're new at all. It seems like you've been doing this for a dozen years. So I'm so honored to be here with you today.
Well, I appreciate that. No, my feet are very, very wet. I'm just about ankle deep in this journey, and I'm really grateful to God for the opportunity to meet the people that I am. And I meant what I said about you. I want to do two things right off the bat. First, I want to thank you for attending our very first volunteer meeting that we had online. That was very kind of you to do, and your presence being there, and the way you spoke, it just really adds fuel to the fire, so thank you.
Sure. Yeah, no, I love to see the team and just all the ideas and vision that you're putting together for your community. It's super exciting. And I wish we had people like you in every single area because it's wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. Well, the second question I have for you, it's really not a question, it's really a dig, because I was going to wear another shirt until I read your bio that you're a transplant from Michigan, and don't take too kindly to our football team, so I just wanted to make sure.
There it is. It's growing on me. I don't want to tell my husband this, but it is growing on me. There's something about the Buckeyes. Just oh gosh, the way they were wearing the shirts about Jesus last season. I
Yeah,
just can't argue with that. So yeah, no,
yeah.
that transcends. But yeah, we are here from Michigan. I've been in Ohio for 20 years.
Hmm.
My parents were born and raised in Northeast Ohio, basically, so the Ashland area. So it kind of felt like coming home. My extended family was here when we moved here, so it was nice. It kind of felt like home right from the start. But it's been 20 years now, so yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, okay, so we can call you, a homebody. We can do that.
Yeah.
So before we go any further, tell us a little bit more about your family. I know that you have a large family, and
Mhm.
you can tell me how many kids you have in case the website is wrong.
Okay. I have 9. Um, so yes, I do have friends, a Catholic good friend of mine, a Catholic, woman who calls me an honorary Catholic because of the number of kids that I have. But, yeah, so I never set out to have a family that large, but,
Mhm.
God blessed. And, so, uh, do you want me to go all the way back? Like
Go back as far as you feel,
okay, sure,
really.
sure. Well, so I grew up in the Detroit area. Oh goodness, I guess around 8 years old, acquired a step family, which
Mhm.
was a blessing, but it also I think kind of changed my perspective on things. I had 2 older stepsisters who had some, just difficult teen years, and
Mhm.
both ended up pregnant as teenagers. And I got to see my mom and my stepdad really live out a pro-life ethic. We weren't overly political, really, as a family, but when it came down to it, they were willing to change housing arrangements and mold everything around those kind of unexpected pregnancies, and really welcome my stepsisters and their children in at different times. That kind of came and went, but um, I think that really started me off early on a mindset of um, being pro-life can sometimes be messy. It's not always that easy, but when that's who you are, then that is
Yeah.
just what you do. So, um, yeah, I went off to college. I ended up interning for Right to Life of Michigan. I was a political science major. And then when I graduated from um, Calvin College in Grand Rapids, I was hired by Right to Life of Michigan. So
Oh,
I spent my first 4 years out of college working for them as a field representative in the Detroit area. And my job there was working with local affiliates and chapters to help them do fundraising, uh, help them get out newsletters, just basically reach their community in whatever way that they wanted to. I was a partner in that effort with them.
wow.
So eventually, when I started having children, tried to work with children for a little bit. That wasn't working out great. It got more and more challenging. So I set aside my paid position, became a volunteer at Dearborn Right to Life. I was the president there for a while, but then eventually we moved. I had 3 children there. Then we moved to Ohio.
Hmm.
Um, in Ohio, had several more children, and one of my best stories is that I was overcommitted. I That's just sort of what I do as a person. I'm a serial volunteer and overcommitted. So I told my husband, okay, I'm just gonna go find the local pro-life group. I'm just gonna sit in the back of the room and listen. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna volunteer. I just want to see what's going on. This was in Wayne Holmes Right to Life was our local chapter, is our local chapter. So
Hmm.
that meeting, and by the time I left, they had elected me president of their group. So apparently, some of their volunteers had been doing it for quite a while, had just kind of grown weary. And I guess that they picked up in me enough knowledge to be able to step in and kind of just hit the ground running with that role. So I did that for quite a while, and really all the way until currently. I'm involved with our local Wayne Homes Right to Life affiliate.
Yeah.
But then it didn't take too long then to get plugged into Ohio Right to Life from there. I attended a meeting here in Columbus and ended up joining the board not too long after that. So that's probably been 15 years ago
Wow.
since I joined the board of Ohio Right to Life. So um, yeah, that's sort of the
Yeah.
version of how. Oh, I guess I never really got to the rest of. So on a personal level, then I did have 3 more children here in Ohio. And about 5 years ago, we decided something that had been in my heart for quite a while was being a foster parent.
Mm.
And so I waited. I think our youngest was 9 at the time, and we decided to begin the training, just kind of take baby steps. Figured that we would foster older kids,
Yeah.
school age. We weren't interested in adoption. We were just, wanted to be a foster, you know, family for our community.
Hmm.
So the Lord had other ideas, I think, about what we were going to do as a foster family, though. About 6 months into that, so that will be 4 years as of tomorrow. We had a sibling group of 3 placed with us, and they were very small, 4 months, not quite 2, and 3 years old at the time that they were placed with us. So they've been an enormous blessing. It did eventually come to where their parents' rights were terminated, and so we stepped forward for adoption. It was never a question in our minds if that was the road that it went, that we would end up wanting to adopt. So we're now just waiting for a court date to make that final and legal, but otherwise it feels like they've been part of our family right from the beginning. So that's been a huge blessing. Our families really, uh, the older kids have really stepped in to be helpful. Not all the time. There are times we have to do a little arm twisting, little, hey, honey, I need you to babysit on a moment's notice kind of thing. But
Right.
so they're just lovely children. I love them to death. So yeah.
That's incredible. Well, tell us how you met your husband, you know,
Oh
and a little
wow.
bit about him. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Oh, my poor husband. He's I don't we do have a very, very healthy partnership in our marriage, but I think there's times that I maybe get out front on some things, and then I bring him with me. So we actually, so I had been away at school in the Grand Rapids area,
Mhm.
And he and his family started attending the church that I went to in Dearborn Heights, Michigan. And so when I came back from college, they were already going to the church that I was part of. So we both ended up at the same, singles, not single, what would they call it, young adult ministry
Sure.
things. You know, it was a good game of hearts, like the actual card game Hearts is
All right.
yes, isn't it funny? So yeah, we just had that spark and then started dating. And then when I graduated from college, then it was the fall after that we got married. So
Mm,
uh,
that's
we moved kind of
excellent.
fast, but it was yeah, he's a treasure, and he's got that's actually what is actually enabling me to be able to take this position.
Mm,
um, is his partnership there, and he's set aside some of his things to be home with the kids so that I can be here in Columbus for 3 out of the 5 days of the week. So I'm just will be very grateful to him for making that happen.
that's absolutely fantastic. And according to your website, you both run a resale shop here in
Yeah,
Ohio.
yeah, yeah. So that's been an adventure, unexpected, but again, just one of those things that ends up the way it changes your life and your heart for people is
Mm,
amazing. So, um, yeah, we he was out of a job right around the time that there was kind of that internet burst type thing. Bust,
yeah,
I don't know what you call it, but
for
so
sure.
he was out of work, and we had 6 children, and thought, you know what, let's start a business. It was like,
Right.
from scratch, he's been going to storage unit auctions and
Mhm.
buying this. You have to buy the whole. When you buy it, you have to take everything in that storage unit.
Oh,
So picture Storage Wars. So here we are with all this stuff that we're acquiring in the back of our house. And I looked at it and I was like, honey, you have to stop, or we have to start a business. Like, there's
mm,
no way you can continue buying. We can't, there's a handful of things you can sell on eBay, but
sure.
not the massive amounts of stuff he was bringing home. So sure enough, we opened a store downtown Worcester.
Mhm.
It's a little shop, but it has turned in. I thought we'd be going to garage sales and like buying out their inventory. We have people come in all the time. A lot of hurting people in need,
Mhm. Sure.
who have their issues and their addictions, but you get to
Yeah,
know them on a human level instead of just like a statistic or a
absolutely. Absolutely.
generalizations that you miss
Yeah.
so much of people. And I have seen the most tattoo covered, pierced, hard looking person come in, and they're just lovely people. They're wonderful. And it just,
Absolutely.
you realize how superficial some of those impressions are and how
Sure.
untrue some of them can be. So yeah, I just when the children came to us 4 years ago, I did have to step back from what I was doing at the store. My husband's been running that, but and so I was home with the kids. But I
Yeah.
spent a long time, and it was a little outside of my comfort zone, to be honest. My husband is great at striking up those conversations and really, being funny, and
Yeah.
I'm a little more reserved about that kind of stuff, but uh, it taught me to kind of come out of my shell, put myself out there, strike up a conversation with people, even when I just kind of felt a little bit nervous or a little reserved.
Sure.
And it's been a great growth opportunity, and the Lord has used it immensely. So,
Wow. That is absolutely beautiful. And you said something there that is not on my script to ask you, but we have to dive into that because oftentimes we do judge a book by its cover. We see a person and make a judgment call, which is why to me another component of life, which is such a mystery and an adventure and a journey, and is so precious, which is, the story of restoring a life, well, preserving a life, one, and making sure that life is born, but then preserving that person's dignity and character no matter what happens to them in life, you know.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right. And it's like I said, great growth and teaching experience that, right. They can have a suit on or be dressed nicely. It doesn't make their heart,
Right.
it's beyond that. So yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Well, let me ask this question because, again, as I said, I think I said it when you were on the volunteer call that we
Yeah.
launched. Was I feel like I've gone to school and I'm in college, and there's all of this information from these different organizations that I never knew existed 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So tell us what the work of Ohio Right to Life is. I know there's a national right to life, and
Sure.
so what is the mission and the work of Ohio
Hmm.
Right to Life?
Hmm. Hmm. I think at its most basic, we want to be a voice for the voiceless.
Mm,
It really the name that you chose is excellent. It really is. The most defenseless of our community, of our society. Not just the unborn. It can be disabled. It
that's
can be
right.
at the end of life when people are very vulnerable.
Right.
People feeling useless or um, like they have nothing left to contribute, or maybe a burden, and the push for um, assisted suicide. I think a lot of that is really driven by a depression or a feeling
Mm,
that you're just a burden on your loved ones, and so we've been pushing back against that
yeah.
as well. I think abortion is front and center most of the time, but there's a whole segment of society. It's not necessarily that we see it that often, but sometimes you do have the cover pulled back, and you see that there's just the ethic about the value of
Mm,
life has eroded so much. And
mhm,
so that's what we want. We want to be a trusted voice of compassion for people, and just helping to illustrate and educate to people how
mhm.
important it is to value life, just because the dignity that's inherent in every human being.
Right.
So yeah,
Wow.
that's in a nutshell. Everything we do from that is an outreach from there. We do a lot of educational things. Legislation is a huge part of what we do here in Columbus, because um, the law is a teacher in many
Yeah.
ways, where uh, a lot of people have the conception or the notion that if something is legal, it must be okay. And
Right.
most of the time that might be true, but I think there's some really noteworthy exceptions to that. And
Certainly.
obviously, abortion is the top of that list for our current day issues. Is that we know that just because it's built does not mean it's right. Um, a
Exactly.
lot of young, vulnerable people may not realize that until it's too late, and then they have to live with something that they really regret. And
Yeah.
yeah, that sentiment about I thought it was okay. Why would somebody let me do something that's legal? I don't understand it. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. It's really interesting that, in talking with people who have had an abortion, be it the mother or the father, and I am a father of an aborted child. That's part
Mhm.
of my story is that, the regret, they can kind of stuff it away somewhere. It kind of always finds itself to the surface because that was a life that you were involved in that you chose to end. And, it's becoming a revolving narrative here at Voices for Life that that's something that we absolutely want to dive into so that there can be healing that happens after the fact.
Yeah, yeah, because that's a huge part. Um, if you live with that without the healing, that's a tragic spot to be. And there's a lot of women who've struggled with
Yeah,
and men, suicidal ideations from because of this, or
of
drug
course.
abuse issues that really skyrocket after an abortion happens.
Yeah,
Um, and there's a lot of places that aren't necessarily going to publish that research, but it's definitely out there. It's very well documented that those are things that are repercussions of an abortion decision. So yeah, healing is
mm,
is very critical. And as Christians, we know that that's there.
yeah.
The hope, the healing are definitely right there, offered by the Lord. So yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, then, you're stepping into this new role as
Mm,
executive director. I'm sure you come to your desk, your office with a particular vision. There are platforms and policies that
sure.
Ohio Right to Life has to align itself with, especially at the national level. But I'm sure, and this is just knowing you for like 5 minutes and 12 seconds. I'm sure that the Lord has given you a specific vision in this new role. What would you think that would be?
Yeah. You know, we can get stuck in this mindset because we did, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, add that constitutional amendment that makes abortion really without limits. The law of the land here in Ohio, which is so unfortunate. And just today, this is a little bit of a side point. Just today, Court of Appeals um, had added an injunction now where it used to be that only a doctor could prescribe mifepristone, the abortion medication, the
Hmm.
chemical abortion, and they've now lifted that any like a nurse or a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant can now do that, which is really so dangerous. There's so many complications from, I think people have this perception that you take a pill, the abortion's done. Uh, 1 in 20 of those situations are going to have an adverse um, event after that, and 1 in 300 is going to have a severe adverse event. So it's just so sad that even what almost everybody would agree is a common sense restriction on this is now not even allowed, according to this judge. Now, we have a pro life attorney general, and we expect that he's going to take that all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary to have that put back in place. But
Hmm.
so it just illustrates, um, you know, the need for our organization to be out here um, educating about this issue. But um, so I think a big thing of what I want to do is um, moving forward with policies that are going to save lives and improve lives right now. We could see that law in place and say, well, there's nothing we can do.
Right.
And yes, our hands are tied in some ways, but I think I want to make sure that we move forward with the things that we can change right now instead of just having maybe like an all or nothing approach. Like, well, if we
Right.
can't overturn the entire law, I guess there's nothing we can do. Um,
Right.
and at Ohio Right to Life, and for me personally, that's not where I want to be. I want to advance policies that are going to help with adoption, with foster care, um, just improving families and the fatherhood initiatives and things like that
Right.
that are so important to changing culture really, and changing the mindset about what an abortion is and what it does. um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I feel like a can-do attitude is necessary, that our culture is worth fighting for. It's worth trying to
Absolutely.
change things. We can't just give up because things got tough. um, we're just going to be here working at whatever place that we can. So that might mean legislation. It might mean creative ways that are non-legislative.
Right.
um, it's electing pro-life officials to make sure that the people who represent us in government are going to make decisions that we, as pro-life people, want them to be advocating for. Um,
Absolutely.
and revitalizing and really growing our grassroots network. It's so important to make sure that you know we as a staff and we as a group, we can't be out there in every single community.
Sure.
That's not what we want to be doing. We want to help
Sure.
empower you to do that kind of thing. So yeah, I that's why it's so exciting to see what your group is already starting on, and all the things that you're working on is exactly what we need to replicate in every single community that doesn't have some kind of pro-life representation. And there's many that
Um,
do. There are many great pro-life groups already out there, but
yeah.
there's some communities where they've gotten tired and they've grown
Sure.
weary. And so we want to come along and say, what can we do to help you? Do you need
That's absolutely
design
right.
work done with a logo, or just dozens of ways that we can be helpful, that we want to fill that gap for them. So
Well, that's good to know. Going deeper into your vision, and this is both inside the office and outside of the office. One of the things that I am running into with some consternation, a little degree of frustration, is the education of the Christian's role in pro-life. There are many Christians, and this is not a statement of condemnation to anyone, but it seems to me that the born again Christian feels that he or she is outside of the realm of pro life, that pro life is not something that should be embraced and advocated for. How do you feel about that? And what steps do you take, again, both inside and outside of the office, to make sure that the born again Christian is um, advised accordingly and educated enough to take the next step?
I definitely see, that's what the statistics coming out of that 2023 amendment that was added is a lot of Christians voted yes on that. And I think what they thought they were voting on was, do I want abortion to be completely legal or completely illegal?
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't the choice. But that is what we got, was completely legal.
Yeah.
And you know, when we ignore culture, uh, it's this law versus culture thing, and so our churches and our pastors are so critical on
Yes.
teaching. I mean, it's clearly biblical to be
Yes.
pro-life. You know, God
Yes.
formed us in the womb. Absolutely, that is part of a biblical message. And if you're preaching from the whole Bible, which, in my background, that's what should be happening. That's
Amen.
kind of without question that should
Amen.
be taught. So yeah, absolutely. But I do think it's going to take some people who are just maybe sitting, listening, and not participating in their congregations, um, speaking up,
Mm-hmm.
saying like their pastor, I think we need to hear more about this issue. I know even within my own church, there were several of us who had been saying like we would really like to see some kind of support network for foster families. And
Yeah.
I had mentioned this a while back, and then nothing really happened for a little bit, but over time there were several other people who said the same or similar things to my pastor. And
Mm-hmm.
so just about a month ago he said, when I start hearing this from multiple places, that's when it's kind of that prick from God.
Yeah.
I think we do need to do something about this. So our church is working on a committee and a support system for um, foster families, and I think that's just, some people don't see the connection. I do. I think
Sure.
it's just
Certainly.
life. I care about kids, whether they're not born yet or whether they're in my arms or whether they're around on a playground. I
Exactly.
care about them, and even adults for that matter. I just I have a heart for people. But
Certainly.
um, so yeah, I think that catalyst of somebody speaking up and just saying, I think that we need to talk more about this. And it doesn't have to be a political conversation at all. I mean,
Sure.
sometimes just shy away from that, and I don't
Sure.
blame them for that. But it's a biblical conversation, so it's 100% something they can address. And I guess if they're worried about stepping on toes, they need to take that up with God. That's between them and the Lord. When
Amen.
you're preaching what the Bible says, then pastors have a special burden, really, that they will answer, to the Lord for what they preach or don't
Sure.
preach. And um,
That's right.
we will all answer for what we do or don't do.
Certainly.
I that is we don't earn heaven, but
Yeah.
it's just we will still, I think, reap what we sow in an eternal way.
You're
So
absolutely right. No, I really do appreciate what you've said about this, because I'm okay with someone who is going to outright disagree. It's like, well, I disagree, whatever, whatever. But apathy, to me, especially in the church, is just like, boy, that's the frustrating point, because to not say anything, to not do anything, to not get out on the field and get involved is, to me, it's just worse than
yeah,
you outright disagreeing. I'd say, okay, we agree to disagree and that's it. But when you don't move the needle in any
yeah,
direction, that's just, and we will stand and be accountable for it. We will.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I appreciate your um, position, and the way that you answered that question is right on point. We can go a little bit deeper, because we're filming this podcast July 9th, if I'm okay with that. But just July 4th, our president signed a big beautiful bill, and of course, one of the things that we participated in was to defund Planned Parenthood. And now that we know that has passed, I have a question.
Sure.
And it was asked of me, and I realized that I did not have the whole enchilada with respect to the answer. But someone asked, what does it specifically mean now that Planned Parenthood is defunded? What can we expect? Is there something that Ohio Right to Life is doing with regard to that? Inform us so I can give the right answers.
Yes, yeah. Well, there's already been a clinic in Cleveland that said they were going to be closing their doors without that taxpayer money flowing in. And I think they were trying to garner sympathy. To me, I
Mm.
was like, hey, that's great. You mean our taxpayer dollars are not keeping your doors open? I'm
Amen.
okay with that. So
Amen.
yeah, so what they were claiming is that the taxpayer money coming in um, was not funding actual abortions, but it was funding staff, it was funding facilities. So it was propping up an industry that already is basically completely surrounded around money.
Correct.
It's a profit motive. It always has been. The fact that that gets overlooked by our mainstream media is sad that they don't see that that's really what all that they care about is a
Yeah.
profit motive. Um,
Yeah.
if they actually cared about women, there would be far higher referrals for adoptions from Planned Parenthoods as they came in and women talked about, it can't be that every single woman who steps in a clinic is wanting an abortion.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, now that pipeline did only shut down for a year. We
Mhm.
initially were hoping that that was going to be the 10-year time frame that was initially proposed, and that did get changed to a year. So
Okay.
that part, I don't know how that's going to play out exactly. If they're um, going to try to kind of hold on longer. I mean, obviously, Planned Parenthood isn't going anywhere. They're a giant multi-million,
Billion.
maybe dollar industry.
Yeah.
They're still going to be out there, but at least we have the assurance that our taxpayer dollars are not participating in that terrible thing. So
Hmm.
um, I guess we'll have to see how that all plays out. I hope that this is something that will end up being renewed annually, where the Planned Parenthood is getting shut out of that taxpayer dollars. And so what happens then is it does go to clinics that do actual women's health care instead of so there may be testing for disease or something like that. Instead of that going to Planned Parenthood, that's going to go to these community health centers that don't
I
do
see.
abortion. So women are still able to obtain all the care that was paying for, but it's going to
Hmm.
happen in a way that does not involve the abortion industry. So
Excellent. Excellent. Is there anything that we can do at the grassroots level as we approach next June or July? When it comes back around, are there things we should be putting in motion or in step to put
that's
the
a
pressure on?
fantastic question. Yeah, that really is a great I guess paying attention to who we elect. Elections do have consequences, and so
Yes.
the more that we can put those people who have the same pro-life ideals that we do in office, then the more we can be confident that those good decisions are coming out of Congress or out of Columbus or wherever it may be. So it is, it's critical, and I think sometimes this gets broken down along party lines, and it
Hmm.
really shouldn't be a party issue. Um, I think one of the parties has made it pretty clear that there's only room for people who are in favor of abortion, but maybe people within that party too need to speak up and say this isn't where we want to be on this issue. So,
Certainly.
um, there's a lot of things that I think maybe 5 years ago we thought weren't going to change, and you never know what the future holds and
Sure.
who God's going to use next. And so yeah, the more people speak up and just start having those conversations.
Right.
I think you have plans to do your fair and all these other outreach ideas. Those are that's exactly what needs to happen is just educating your neighbors and making sure that they know. Some people are pro-life and are afraid to say it. So I'm so
Yeah.
glad that you're afraid to say it, but you give them confidence when they hear you speak out, then that also emboldens them to speak out. So it's just so important. It's when you have that groundswell
Yeah.
and that tide turning, you don't know where that tipping point is, but you guys are definitely part of it, and I'm just so glad that you're out there.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why, while we were fouling with the state, and with the IRS that we were dogmatic about being a C4 instead of a C3 because we want to be involved in whatever influence in the legislation or with local politicians as we can. Couldn't do that with a C3, but no, we want to make sure that our voices are raised as high as we can get them. So yeah, that's what I wanted. And thank you for answering that question because, we have to be able to say, okay, well, what are you out here picketing for? What are you what are you fighting for? And now that you have made that is now an achievement by God's grace, even if for a year, it doesn't stop there. I think one of the things that we do as Christians, another thing that we do as those who are in the pro-life movement is once there's an achievement, we go, okay, we're there. No, it doesn't stop there. You have to do something else. That actually means pick up the baton and go deeper. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Keep working.
So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
that's
Mhm.
absolutely right. Well, tell us how people can get involved. Those, of course, who are here in the state of Ohio specifically with Ohio Right to Life. What can they do?
Yeah. The best place to start is go to our website. There's a
Mhm.
place to sign up to get our emails. We don't throw stuff out constantly. It might be, twice in 1 week and then not for a couple weeks, but we try to keep our supporters informed of what's happening.
Mhm.
Um, there is the March for Life, October 3rd. I think you might already be aware of it, but yeah, that'll
Certainly.
be really important. We want to have a big crowd here in Columbus. There's multiple groups collaborating on making that happen and making sure that people can see how important it is to be pro-life and in a very tangible way of showing up here in Columbus and um, be praying together and having speakers and just making our voices heard here in Columbus. Um,
Excellent.
but our website has a lot of further information about education. There's a place to mark for volunteering. A lot of our volunteering does it's probably best done at a local level, but there are times that we could use people, throughout the state in other ways. So
Mhm.
that would be another thing to look for there on our website. So um, yeah, I think getting plugged in locally is really important. That's got to be the first step, I think, in every conversation there. Mhm.
Certainly, certainly. Well, is there any additional information that you thought, hey, Jerry is definitely going to ask me this question? And I have it for some reason asked.
I think you did cover so much. Yeah, no, I just it's a privilege to be part of this today, and I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
yeah, really if people have ideas, that's the other thing too.
Okay.
My email is cSnyder@ohiolife.org, and I'm fine with that being out there.
Excellent.
We're looking for creative ways to, like I said, we have a can-do attitude about like we're still gonna move forward and we're still gonna work to build up the family and protect life here in Ohio. And so, if you have ideas or thoughts about that, we are listening. I personally am listening. So, yeah.
And you're in a position to do something about it. So that's
I believe so. Yes, now more than ever. But that honor that credit goes to the Lord and not me. So
amen.
he just put me in the right place at the right time, and that was all his doing, not mine. So yeah.
Amen. Amen. Well, I really appreciate you, Carrie. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. Um, you know, I can't wait. We're going to do a lot of things together. Just know
Mhm.
that, and you can't get rid of us here at Voices for Life. Know that too. Okay.
I will look for those times. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, peace and blessings to you. That's going to do it for this episode of We Are Voices for Life podcast. Thank you so much to Carrie Snyder. Again, she is the newly appointed executive director of Ohio Right to Life. We're going to make sure that we have all of her information in the show notes so that you too can roll your sleeves up and get involved with the rest of us. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. My name is Jerry B, and we look forward to seeing you next time. God bless.